How's it going, everyone? This is Midnight Strike 3625, and today we are going to be taking a look at the new Ozzy Osbourne album entitled Ordinary Man, right here. What makes this album so significant is it follows nearly a decade-long absence of Ozzy Osbourne in his solo career. This is his 12th studio album. His 11th studio album, Scream, came out in 2010, and it's been a very long time. A lot can change in 10 years. Hell, the entire musical landscape as we know it can shift. While we haven't really seen that much in rock and metal, we've definitely seen country go towards a more pop direction in recent years. But then again, that's not really anything that I deal with on my channel. But for all intents and purposes, there are some pop elements on one of the songs that you've probably heard already, known as Take What You Want. We'll talk about that a little bit later because it is the last song on the album. What makes this album so significant, as well as being the first Ozzy Osbourne album in 10 years, is the fact that it brings to the fold lots of different artists that were featured on a lot of the different songs. It has Slash, it has Duff McKagan from Guns N' Roses, it has Elton John, as well as Post Malone, who is featured heavily on the two tracks It's a Raid, as well as the last track, Take What You Want. Now, this album is a little bit of a mixed bag. When it comes to their last studio album, or his last studio album, I should say, Ozzy Osbourne kind of flopped. As much as I like Scream, I got it for like $5 in a bargain bin the year it came out at a Barnes & Noble. Yeah, remember those? So it was in a bargain bin, so I figured, hey, it's the newest Ozzy Osbourne album. I like Ozzy Osbourne. I absolutely loved Black Rain. That was one of my favorite Ozzy Osbourne albums of all time. So I picked it up, listened to it, only liked about 3 of the songs. Title track, Soul Sucker, or Soul Sucka, and, what was it, Life Won't Wait. It was a pretty cool song, harkening back to the early days of Ozzy Osbourne. But when it came to the totality of the album, it just really fell flat for me, and I was very disappointed with it. There was a lot of filler on it, I will say. Now, it's not really the same case with Ordinary Man. It's definitely better than Scream, and it's definitely got better production value to it. While it's not as heavy as Scream in some places, it feels like basically a full circle. Ozzy Osbourne has come full circle with his history in Black Sabbath after closing out that chapter in, I believe, 2015 or 16, correct me if I'm wrong. But the last studio album by Black Sabbath was 13, released, ironically speaking, in 2013, and it definitely felt like the band was coming full circle. It provided much needed closure for fans such as myself, who basically viewed Black Sabbath as a lost cause after 1979. And then, of course, in 1995, when they released their last studio album with a couple one-off vocalists, I believe it was Forbidden, they really didn't do much of anything, and it was very disappointing. But when 2013 came around, Ozzy Osbourne came back, first ever album with Ozzy Osbourne since Never Say Die in 1978, and it closed it out very nicely. They had come full circle with themselves, and they were ready to begin the next chapter and the next stage in their musical careers. Or in some places, in some cases, I should say, retire gracefully from the music scene. And it was a very good thing, in my opinion. But when it comes to the album in question that we're talking about today, Ordinary Man right here, it's a little bit of a mixed bag because it's got some really good moments and really awesome harkening back to the days of Black Sabbath, as well as a lot of elements from, I believe, Master of Reality and Volume 4 era Black Sabbath, incorporated into a lot of the songs, like Under the Graveyard, as well as the first song on the album, Straight to Hell. But there are other songs that just don't really do it for me. Take What You Want is one of them, even though that's one of the most heavily promoted songs on the album, just because of the shift in tone as well as the genre shift. I suppose you're taking rock and metal and combining it with pop. And even though I don't really care much for it, it's not necessarily the my world of the album. like I thought it was when I first listened to it. It's definitely grown on me a tiny bit, but I'm just not really a pop guy, and I'm not really a big fan of Post Malone in general, although I will admit that he was very, very good in It's a Ray. That's one of my favorite songs on the album. Now, when it comes to the musicianship on the album, it's actually very good, and everything fits together quite nicely, especially speaking about all the various guest musicians from different genres and different groups. You got Slash and Duff McKagan from the hard rock genre. You got Tom Morello, which is more of a rap metal genre from Rage Against the Machine, as well as Elton John, who represents the more classic era of rock. Now, all of these different influences and different genres come together, and they actually form a very solid final product. Albeit some of the musicianship is quite average, especially when it comes to songs like Eat Me and the penultimate song, Holy for Tonight, not including Take What You Want. And, of course, Take What You Want, like I said, it's grown on me a little bit, but it's still really not one of my favorites because I just don't like pop. So, when it comes to the musicianship on the album, it's really good, but the songs themselves suffer in some places just because they seem a little uninspired. The best songs on the album are, in my opinion, Under the Graveyard, which has a really heavy kick-ass riff and a Children of the Grave vibe to it, as well as having other elements from Volume 4, Masters of Reality, and a little Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath era Black Sabbath in it. And Today Is the End, I would say, has more of the doom metal that defined Black Sabbath's early career, as well as having a lot of the heaviness from, say, Black Rain, Ozzy Osbourne's solo career. But when it comes to the album itself as a whole, the final product, it really pains me to say this, but it kind of falls flat. Even though I just got done praising it for the last basically 7 minutes, the final product ends up falling flat due to the filler tracks, I will say. There are a lot of great moments on this album, and I'm not going to say that it's necessarily a bad album or a terrible album, but it's definitely not one of Ozzy Osbourne's best, and I think his best days are behind him when it comes to making music. Am I glad this album came out in its current form? Hell yeah. Why would I deny Ozzy Osbourne? Why would I deny an Ozzy Osbourne album? But I definitely think that his peak was around 2007-ish with Black Rain, I Don't Want to Stop, Trapdoor, and the like. That is definitely one of my favorite albums, and I think that's where he sort of tapered off a little bit. Now, with this album and its Black Sabbath influences, I think that it definitely did a better job than 13 in incorporating old style and classic Black Sabbath influences and elements into the music, because it doesn't sound like it's blatantly ripping it off. Like in 13, you had the song Loner, for instance, which sounded like a blatant carbon copy of the song Nativity in Black with different lyrics. NIB, for those people who don't know what that stands for. So, yeah, this album is good, but it's definitely short of great. So I am going to give it a 7 out of 10. It's average, I will say. It's decent, but I can't give it any higher than that. So this is Midnight Strike 3625. This is a very decent album, and it's a must-listen to for any fan. Keep calm and rock on.